Greetings, my putrefying pals, and welcome to the latest edition of the Horror Tour Guide podcast. I'm your horror host, Slaughter Sin, She-Wolf, Empress of Gore, and today we have the most exciting guest, and a tasty morsel for me, of course. Please introduce yourself and tell me what you do.
Hey Sin, my name is Zane Wylie, and I carve real human skulls.
Ooh, morbidly fun. Where are you located?
I'm in the Washington, D.C. area.
Can you tell us how you ended up carving skulls?
I was a part of a counterterrorism program that studied microfacial expressions and body language in key areas, looking for individuals that appeared to do harm, and there's certain behavioral signals that are indicative of violent intent. And as I was studying microfacial expressions, those are tiny expressions that leak out the emotion a person's trying to hide, and as you can imagine, in their face. I was also studying muscle structure in the face, and I wanted to buy a real human skull so I could see where the different ligaments and muscles attached to the skull, so I could better analyze the facial movements and movements that are used to express emotion. And as I started to get more involved in studying the skull, I basically combined two of my talents, which was carving on bone, and decided to give it a shot with real human skulls. At first, I was really nervous about it because that's somebody's skull. You know, if I mess that up, that's big time. Mm-hmm. And I was a little afraid at first, and usually when I think something's not a good idea, I do it anyway, and that's basically how I started carving. Yeah.
Do you primarily just carve on human skulls?
It's basically my niche. I just carve on real human skulls. Now, primarily, most of the carving I do is on replicas. So what I'll do is I'll find a place that sells medical training skulls, old retired medical training skulls, and I'll carve on those and make replicas of those. Or if I find a really nice skull that shows really good dentation, I'll make a replica of it first before I carve on it, and then I'll carve on those replicas. So primarily now I carve, I would say almost 99% of the time, I'll carve on replicas of skulls. My inventory basically consists of either replicas of real human skulls that I've carved on, or replicas of replicas that I've carved on.
Interesting. Can you tell me about in the beginning when you first started purchasing skulls? I remember there was a little story behind that.
Sure. Well, right in the beginning, when I was purchasing my first skull from somebody that was selling them, I was trying to get them to come down in price because at the time I worked for the government and I wasn't making much money, and he said, no, I'm not going to lower the price, but if you're an artist and you're good at carving animal skulls, at the time I was, he said, why don't you just do some, people like tribal stuff, painted or carved on animal skulls. And I had some animal skulls I'd found out in the woods in my garage, and sure enough, I painted those up and did a little carving, and they sold really fast on eBay. So I was buying animal skulls, carving them, selling them, until I built up a bankroll large enough where I could buy a couple human skulls. At the time, my skills as a carver had progressed to the point where the gentleman that I was buying these skulls from suggested that I try on a real human skull. And like I said at first, I said there's no way I'd ever do that. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I realized, yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do. I did that and put one up on eBay, and it sold within a half hour. I almost doubled the price of what I had listed it before, and that the second time I did that sold pretty fast. So I took that money and started purchasing human skulls and carving them and selling them, and I wound up taking a lot of business away from some of the real human skull dealers on eBay. And what they did was report me, even though I was following all of eBay's rules. The way eBay works is if you get enough complaints, they just shut your listing down, whether or not an actual human even looks at it. And so I decided just to start selling replicas once I met somebody who was a mold maker, and stop selling the real stuff on eBay, and then open up my own site. So now, obviously, on eBay, I just sell replicas of the stuff that I carve, and then on my website, I think I have like 3 or 4 of the real ones that I carve.
What is the going rate for your skulls, both human and replicas?
The lowest I have right now is $4,500 for a real human skull, and I think there's one listed up there for $8,500 to $9,000. I have a sword hilt that I've carved out of a real human femur. It's the St. Michael sword, and I believe that one is $4,500 as well. The replicas on my site range anywhere from $187 to $287. I've got a special one for Horror Tour Guide as well.
Yay!
You all know.
Do you want to announce the promotion for the skulls? I'm so excited.
Oh, thanks. Well, I carved a replica skull just for your audience. It has your logo and a couple depictions of those cool evil clowns that you have there. This is an original piece of mine. Normally, my pieces start at $500 if somebody was to commission me to do a replica skull. So it's going to be, I'm just going to give away the original. If they go to realhumanskull.com/horror, it'll take you right to the site. And all you have to do is join the mailing list, and then we will pick a winner. So it's realhumanskull.com/horror. We'll give away the original. I'll give you the list of people. You can pick them. And then somewhere down the road, we'll make a special replica that your listeners can buy as well.
Yay, guys. We're very honored to have you do that for us, and we thank you very much for that. And I'm very excited. I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't seen it in my hand as of yet. And I know that it's going to be 10 times better once I see it in person.
Well, I'll sign it and send it out to you, and then you can pick the winner.
Yeah, it sounds great. So, guys, make sure you get your entries in. Can you tell us a little bit about your skulls? Where have they ended up? Where have they been?
As a marketer, it's difficult to pick my demographic because just from the people that contact me and the people that I see at conventions that I have tables set up at, it's a wide range. I can't say it's males 35 to 45 or females from this to that. It goes from I've had archaeologists purchase my skulls. I've had just regular blue collar folks like myself pick up skulls, and professionals to just regular folks. Now, obviously, the real human skulls are more expensive, and so that's obviously a different type of demographic, but it's a wide range. I've shipped skulls to Germany. That wound up in Germany at a museum. In Switzerland, I know there's a collector that has quite a few of my skulls. So it's both right here in the United States and internationally.
Exciting. So fantastic. Can you tell us about the popularity of your skulls? Which films and television shows have they been featured on?
Let's see, right in the beginning, I was contacted by a producer for the TV show Constantine that was on NBC, and that was a great show. And it was funny, I got an email saying, and if you're an artist, you've gotten this email before, if you have any type of popularity, it's I've worked for a major TV show or a production, and would you be interested in doing a piece for us? And usually that's followed up with, it'd be great exposure for you. And so I was a little skeptical at first and didn't even answer the email right away. And once I started talking with him, realized that it was for that TV show Constantine, and surprised I was actually going to get paid. And so I carved a replica skull for the character Papa Midnight in Constantine. And if you've ever seen that show, he has a sister that he talks to that's in hell, and he uses her skull as kind of like a gateway to that. I was the one that created that skull. It was really probably one of my first production pieces for a show. I really wish I could get it back. I've been given permission to recreate it so I can sell replicas of it, but right now I've got so many different projects in the works, it's kind of taken the back seat. That was the Constantine piece. And later on I did the TV show Preacher. AMC's Preacher rented 13 different skulls from me for an episode in season 2 where they were in a voodoo shop. You'll see any skull that you see in there is basically one of my skulls.
What is your most expensive piece?
So the most expensive piece now, and if you go to my website, it's the St. Gonzaga processional skull. It is an old medical training skull that has the top of the skull cut off. The calvarium is cut, and I cut that into pieces and created a crucifix and other pieces that are attached to that. It also has a real religious relic from Saint Gonzaga himself in the crucifix as well, and that is, I believe, it's anywhere from $8,500 to $9,500. I'm really going to hate to part with that piece because it was such a lot of work. That piece itself is going to be made into a replica. I made a mistake of one of the pieces that I sold, which was another St. Gonzaga skull. I sold that without making replicas of it, and then later on I was contacted by a coinsmith, and they used the likeness of that skull that I carved for a piece, a silver coin that's an actual piece of currency for Cameroon.
Oh, wow.
And so if you go to the spot on my website, it'll be collector's coins. There'll be a St. Gonzaga coin. That's the coin that is actual piece of currency in Cameroon. And I'm just kicking myself for not making replicas of it. And I've asked the buyer if I could buy it back from him, and he does not want to part with that piece. So unfortunately, there will never be replicas made of that unless he changes his mind. So I'm not making a mistake this time. As detailed and as painstaking as that piece was to carve that he owns, the one that I have right now is probably 10 times as detailed and as difficult. The artist that makes my molds is going to be sweating bullets once I send that to him, because it's going to be a very difficult, challenging piece to replicate. But with his talent, I know it's going to be one of the best replicas that I sell on my site.
Wow. For those that don't know the person that you're speaking of, who is Saint Gonzaga?
So Saint Gonzaga was somebody who unfortunately I don't have all the years that he was alive, but in Catholicism he is a historical character, a saint who had a path, a career, financially would have been most beneficial for him, but he chose to serve the people who were dying. And if you type in Saint Gonzaga, you'll see pictures of him, and there's usually a skull somewhere in the picture, and it was because he gave up everything to serve people who were dying, and he wound up dying from the disease that he was helping people with in the end. So he was a young saint, and he's kind of someone that people would look up to choosing a path that's selfless as opposed to choosing another path. And that's why it's one of the reasons why so many people look up to him.
What's your experience with the skulls? Have you had any paranormal encounters for carving on someone's human skeleton?
I wish I could come up with some type of crazy story, and I know my skulls would sell better if I would just lie and come up with some type of insane story or encounter. And I haven't, and it may be because of the way that I treat what I do. So if it's a real human skull that I'm carving on, I have a set of standards that I don't violate. I don't carve anything that's graphic or vulgar or anything else like that on a real human skull. I don't do anything that's like commercial, so on a real human skull. So if somebody wants me to say carve a Starbucks logo on a real human skull, obviously I wouldn't do that. And a lot of thought and prayer comes into how I'm going to treat this person's real human skull, what I carve. So it's not the best standard, but I always ask myself, would I like this carved on my skull? Would I think this would be respectful? Obviously, I'm into some crazy stuff because since I carved real human skulls, but I just kind of look at it that way. Would I find this, if this was carved on my skull, would I find it respectful? Would my family find it respectful? And so I treat it a little bit differently, I guess, and maybe that's why I haven't had any encounters or any scary moments. I've carved a lot of real human skulls, and I haven't had any of that type of thing happen.
Where do you normally sell your skulls?
Right now I'm doing local stuff. It just seemed like this year was not a real profitable year for cons for me, except for the local cons. I kind of have a separate budget just for cons, and when that budget is in the green enough for me to do a con, then I'll do them. If it's in the red, then I just basically stay for the local stuff. I have the website. I've got a couple different websites. My other website just caters to the replicas that I sell. I'm gearing that more towards advertising to the industry for doing shows and other types of productions. But that's basically it. Just my website and Comic-Cons. I don't have a brick and mortar store. Unfortunately, with the type of lifestyle that I live, I do a lot of traveling with my work, and that's difficult for me to be tied down into like a gallery or a store. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing a gallery show because that's not a permanent type thing, but I'm just not set up for something as permanent as a brick and mortar store at this time.
With all the wonderful skulls that you have, I would definitely encourage at least doing one show. You have enough for an exhibit. You really do.
Oh, thank you.
And they're so great. And there's such a wonderful variety that you have.
Thank you. Well, there's I think there must be 33, I think there are at least 30 different, I know it's over 30 different varieties of skull designs that I have.
Wow.
When I get a 10 by 10 booth, there's definitely, I have to be very creative in how I display stuff so everybody can see it.
What has been your most desired piece?
That would be, right now, that's the War Chaplain mask. So I was given 2 skeletons at one point that somebody purchased at an auction. They put them into storage and then never sold them. I sold one of them, and then the other one was really kind of damaged because of how it was kept. And he basically said, hey, look, you can have this if you want. And so it was a skeleton, and the skull was kind of beat up. It was cut. Because it was an old medical training skull, the one you'd see up on a stand, and I didn't know what to do with it, and so I just basically kind of took my philosophy of using what you have and making the best of it, and so basically I cut the skull into pieces and made it so that you can wear it as a mask. It was kind of like my version of the Tibetan necromancer mask.
Nice.
So I call it the War Chaplain mask. I still have the original, but the replicas of that sell like crazy.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And I have seen this mask. It's awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoy that piece.
You're so very talented.
Thank you.
So now, where do you see yourself, or how do you see your art taking a turn, to move towards a different goal? Or is this something that you want to do for the rest of your life? Is there any other goals or directions that you want to take with your craft?
At this time, sell more of what I have, and I would just like to have more time to come up with more designs. Right now, it's balancing priorities and family time, and I have a standard of not taking away family time. And so a lot of my work is done early in the morning before family wakes up. I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I work out. I engage in my other job, which is I'm a consultant, and most of that work is all done online. And so I can get that work done and then still carve a little bit during the day and not have to take time away from my family. So I don't get much sleep, but I do get a lot done.
What are you a consultant for?
Behavior analysis. I'm basically on retainer with a firm that handles court cases that I can analyze video depositions, and I can tell both for their clients and the people that they're going up against where some of the areas are that they need to ask questions, do handwriting analysis, I do behavior analysis, and I do statement analysis. So most of that is all done online. I don't advertise that part of my life just because I'm on retainer with this one place, and if I take any jobs, it's very difficult outside of the people that I work with to see if any new jobs that I would take would interfere with any of the clients or business that I'm currently on retainer. So I don't even bother with it. And believe it or not, I'm also a stage hypnotist, so I do travel around for that as well.
How long have you been a hypnotist? I remember you spoke of a story involving Rosario Dawson. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
All right, and so I'll try to make this as less confusing as possible. So about 1992, I used to publish a comic book by Raven Publications. The name of the book was Fenry. It starts with an F, F-E-N-R-Y. Mm-hmm. I used to publish a comic book, and during that, for issue 3, I engaged an artist who basically, for one reason or another, the comic book dissolved after that, and I wasn't able to publish issue 3. So fast forward like 10, 12 years, 15 years, I can't remember how long, I'm at a Comic-Con selling a comic book convention, or a comic book collection that I required in a tax auction, and I run into him, and he's like, oh my gosh, the first thing he says, I am so sorry, please, listen, how can I make it up to you? And so I said, well, you know what, I'm a stage hypnotist now, even though I'm selling this comic book collection. I found out that his niece is Rosario Dawson, and I said, okay, look, I'm a stage hypnotist now. Why don't we stage a picture with me pretending I'm hypnotizing Rosario Dawson, and I can add it to my promotional material? He's like, we'll do it. So he walks me up to where she's sitting at the table, and we just start talking. And she's like, "Well, forget that. Why don't we just do a show at the bar across the street?" We wound up just throwing a bunch of chairs together at this bar. Did a hypnosis show right there at the bar, and I got hypnotized. I got her hypnotized for a bit, and then had a fun show. So most of my shows these days are in the Midwest. I'll do, in the Midwest, it's real popular to do all-night graduation parties and all-night prom parties, and they usually have some type of entertainment. It's not so much on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. It's usually just moon bounces and whatever it is. But in the Midwest, so I got an agent that hires me out to do those types of gigs. I don't do comedy clubs as much anymore because it's just difficult dealing with drunk people. So I would rather just sit in my table carving skulls than having to hypnotize drunk people. Well, the problem is alcohol increases your personality. So if you're a very hyper person and you're a little bit of an a-hole, well, then you're going to be even more so when you're drunk. Hypnosis does the same thing. So if you combine those two, you're in for a pretty crazy show, and it's a lot of babysitting. Anyhow, so yeah, that's the hypnosis part of my life.
Well, you have a whole bag of tricks there, Zane.
Yeah, my resume basically reads like a madman's journal. That's basically it.
What's your definition of horror?
I think it basically has to do with fear of loss. So it could be loss of life, loss of social station. I mean, certain things can be horrific to different people and not to others. So it's basically finding a formula, whether or not it's you're looking at it from a purely economic reason, as far as where you would make movies, write anything in that genre, to just being a part of life. But I think horror has to do with loss. I've never seen a horror movie that had anything to do with gaining anything. And even if you gain your freedom at the end, it still has to do with a loss of something. So it's dangling that opportunity that, I guess horror, when it comes down to it, it's loss of control. So it starts with loss of control. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything to fear.
Who's your favorite horror character?
I'm trying to think which horror character incited that feeling inside me. And of course, when I was a kid, I was scared the crap out of by Freddy Krueger. I walked in to some friends watching the movie, and it was something I hadn't seen before. It was certainly kind of new for its genre, and it depicted something that you can't control. I mean, it's in your mind, right? So anything can happen there, and that, I think, it's one of the reasons why the movie was so successful. Whereas something like Halloween, Michael Myers didn't talk. There was no emotion in his face, and that also was mysterious, and it also scared the crap out of me when I was a kid when I watched that movie.
Are you looking forward to Halloween?
Yeah. I basically I have to find a way to see the movie without my kids knowing that I've seen it. So
put them to bed early. What's your favorite horror film?
You know, it's funny. Last night I watched the 1945 version of Dorian Gray, and it's not portrayed as, it's creepy and there's murder, but I think what's truly horrific about that is you've got Oscar Wilde, who depicts himself in many different versions in that film. Well, he's depicted in many different versions in that film, and I think for right now that's probably my favorite horror movie, because the things that they did in that movie, and most of it is black and white, the horror is really that we're all capable of that type of cruelty, and a lot of us would take that choice of never aging, never dying, and indulging in selfish desires, and I think that's really the true horror of it. I mean, it's easy to overlook our base desires when we all have that potential to be horrific, just like Dorian Gray was in this movie.
Get your purchases in. He's offering a great discount for those interested. And they're perfect for cons. You can get them signed by your most favorite ghoulish guests at the cons.
This is Zane Wylie, Human Skull Carver, and you're listening to Horror Tour Guide Podcast.
Well, thank you for your time, Zane Wylie. It's been a most pleasurable experience. But now it's time to go. It's time to get eaten.
Any last words?
If I understand you're a werewolf, and if you have to eat me, just please save my skull.
You got it. Yeah!